بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ربي زدني علما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters. I hope this finds you well, inshallah. Welcome to today's session on conquering midterm exams. My name is Saina Zulfikar and I'm a student counselor at the International Open University. So firstly, Jazakumullahu khairan kathira for tuning in. And inshallah, in today's session, we will discuss a few tips and strategies on how you can perform well in your upcoming midterm exams, as well as a few suggestions on how you can make the most out of the remaining time that you have until the midterms, inshallah. So without further ado, let's dive in. So when it comes to studies or when it comes to academic learning, the very first principle to keep in mind is to actually be intentional about your learning. Because at its core, the heart of learning or the purpose of learning is all about being intentional, right? So, for example, you watching this session today is intentional. You have a purpose to fulfill, right? Likewise, you studying at IOU, you watching your modules, you taking notes is also intentional because it all serves a purpose, right? So intentionality is very, very important when it comes to, performing well and inshallah preparing for the midterms, and being intentional about studies and about this learning process demands being purposeful, demands being reflective, demands being focused, and demands being present. So these are four ways to actually excel in your exams and excel in your academic learning. Number one, be purposeful. Number two, be reflective. Reflect on what you've studied. Reflect on how you can make the process easier for you. Number three is stay focused, stay goal oriented. And number four is being present and not let distractions take the most out of you. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that actions are according to intentions and everyone will get what was intended, right? So keeping this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in mind, this is a reminder for us, brothers and sisters, that we're all here at IOU. We're all studying for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we are learning to become a better Muslim, a better version of ourselves before we wish to benefit people around, inshallah. Now, after having renewed our intention and understand the purpose of our learning, the next step is to actually be proactive and practically equipped. So when it comes to midterm exams, it's important to memorize certain concepts and certain terminologies. Although a lot of questions in the midterm and the final exams are MCQ based, but that doesn't still deny the importance of memorizing certain facts in order to retain them as you go and attempt your exam. So a few important tips to inshallah memorize is consider memorizing names. So let's say if you're studying fiqh, right, you will learn a lot about different scholars, you will learn about their works. So consider memorizing their names, the books that they've contributed. Likewise, consider memorizing dates and important years. So, for example, if you're studying Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, it's important to make sure that you're aware of certain dates and certain important years that happened in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Likewise, the names of the battles, the timings of those battles, and the context of those battles, right? Thirdly, ayahs and ahadiths. And this is common to all courses. So if you're whether you're taking fiqh or whether you're taking Islamic psychology, You will see that a lot of ayahs and a lot of ahadith from the Quran are repeatedly used throughout your course. So consider memorizing those ayahs because sometimes in your midterm exams, you might come across questions that ask you about a specific ayah, right? And finally, of course, memorize key definitions. So, for example, if you're studying psychology, if you're studying aqidah, if you're studying education, consider memorizing key definitions of certain concepts. So, make sure you mark these important definitions and you memorize them, you highlight them, and you understand the crux of these definitions, inshallah. Next is consider using the 3R method. Now, this is a method that works really good for preparing for your upcoming midterm exams. And the 3Rs actually stand for read, relate, and review. So a lot of students actually come up to me and ask me, how do I remember what I've learned, right? Because naturally, you have started your modules way back in September and you're attempting your exams in November, right? So that's a long time to remember what you've learned. So the only way to retain what you've learned is to read, relate, and continue reviewing it. So by reading, what I mean is every day before you begin your studies, take 5 minutes of your time to skim through your notes very, very quickly. So let's say you are doing your Arabic module today, right? So before you begin your module, consider quickly reading your notes from the previous modules so that you understand the context of the current module and you're able to recall and retain um, certain information, right? Next is to relate. Find an example and make the concept meaningful. So this works very well in practical courses, like for example, psychology. So if you come across a new concept, if you come across a new theory, try to find an example to simplify that and try relating yourself to it so as to make it meaningful. Um, Additionally, let's say if you're taking up a technical course, for example, research methodology, you could consider teaching or sharing the concepts that you've learned with your family, with people around you, or even with your fellow classmates at IOU, right? So when you review and when you basically review and when you share that information with people around, it simplifies the learning process for you as well as for them. So there's khair in that as well. And lastly, revise what you've learned repeatedly. So this is, if there's anything that, if there's only one thing that you could take away from this session, brothers and sisters, it would always be to review and revise what you've learned repeatedly. So I encourage a lot of students to actually spend 10 minutes of their time every day to revise what they've learned. So the revision doesn't have to be as elaborate and as long as the module, right? So typically a module is about 1 hour, 25 minutes or 1 hour, 15 minutes, right? But revision should be very short and must be very crisp. So don't spend more than 20 minutes or 15 minutes, as a matter of fact, 10 to 15 minutes on revising what you've learned. So the best way to revise is basically to review the notes that you've taken, to review the slides from the module. And if you have time, consider reading the assigned course text. Okay. And this should be done ideally right after you complete your module. So spend 10 minutes to revise and review the material and then proceed to attempt the module quiz. So this way, inshallah, it helps you relate to the content and it helps you retain what you've actually learned. Next is a very unconventional tip, but I'd still like to share this, is that do not skip your modules, brothers and sisters, even if you're running short of time. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of questions from the midterm exams are actually from your module lectures. So let's say, you know, there are about 50 questions in your module test, in your midterm exam. So let's assume there are 50 questions, and out of those 50 questions, nearly 40 of them will be from your module lecture. And 10 of those questions could be, let's say, from the course text. It could be, a practical question or a general understanding question. But majority of the questions are actually from your module lecture. So make sure you don't skip your modules, you're taking your notes while you're listening to those modules so that inshallah you make the most out of this experience. And in case you're really, really running short of time and you have a lot of modules to complete, I would encourage you to consider increasing your speed. That is, increase the number of modules that you do every day. So if you have been, let's say, doing only one module a week, or one module a day, because we're now so close to the midterm exams, I would encourage you to at least complete 3 modules every single day so that you can finish them well before the midterm exams begin. And you can also consider increasing the module speed. That is, you can increase the speed of the lecture from 1.5 to 1.75x so that you save about a couple of minutes. And make sure you also review notes from senior students. You might find these notes under the course notes section on your student dashboard. So make sure you also review those notes while you take your own notes so that inshallah you haven't missed any information. Next is a very important tip that I would advise you to keep in mind even for the final exams, and that is to always be familiar with the exam patterns, right? So always look for familiar patterns, and this is what we call a learning schema in psychology. So schemas are basically shortcuts that help us navigate life with ease. And likewise, we need to have schemas even when we're learning so that we know the shortcuts, we know the patterns that will help us, inshallah, perform well. So, by patterns and by schemas in the context of exams, what I mean is that take cues from your module tests, right? So, the module tests that you have been attempting for now are exactly how your midterm questions will also look like. Okay, so make sure you're paying attention to those patterns and you're understanding those patterns to inshallah be prepared for the midterm exams. And additionally, I would also advise you to be familiar with the number of questions that would be asked in your midterm exams, the duration of the midterm exams, and the type of questions that would be asked. So I get a lot of questions from students in the very, very last minute asking me, will I have MCQs, or will I also have subjective questions? And my answer to them is that all of these answers, all of these details will be on your student dashboard. So make sure you are familiar with these important details. You're also familiar with when your exams will begin. Make sure you're also familiar with the fact that if you will be attempting your exams at the designated center, or will you be attempting them from home. So be specific and be familiar with these details so as to avoid any last minute stress and hassle, inshallah. Next, while we spoke about module quizzes in the previous slide, I also wanted to remind you and bring this to your attention that consider reviewing your module quizzes, because a lot of questions in your midterm exams are actually a repetition from your module quizzes. So make sure you thoroughly review your midterm quizzes, inshallah, so that you're able to understand the patterns, you're able to understand what kind of questions to anticipate and to expect in your midterms. So, inshallah, if you have time, I would encourage you to go back and review your module quizzes. And in case there were any incorrect questions, or any questions that you incorrectly answered, rather, try to look for the right answers and, inshallah, prepare ahead. Lastly, as we talk about midterm exams and as we talk about studies, a final reminder to you, brothers and sisters, is to be creative with your study routine and spice up your study experience, right? So sometimes, you know, the way we approach learning is is problematic. A lot of students find studying boring because they're not really creative in making their study experience fun. So consider making your study experience fun by experimenting different learning strategies. Let's say if you haven't tried digital note taking, consider trying digital note taking. Try taking notes on Google Docs, on Word documents, and keep experimenting until you find something that works out for you. Likewise, if you are not a person who enjoys highlighting and using colors and making diagrams and doodling and taking mind maps, I would encourage you to try doing that so as to basically make the study experience fun and inshallah conquer this boredom and this monotonous idea of learning, inshallah. So with that, alhamdulillah, we have completed our discussion on preparing for midterm exams. So just quickly reviewing what we've discussed, brothers and sisters, the first step towards preparing for the upcoming midterm exams is to be intentional, renew your intention, and reflect and purify it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, memorize important information like names, dates and years, ayahs and hadiths, and any key definitions. Thirdly, as you begin preparing for your midterm exams, make sure you're reading and skimming through your notes. You're able to relate to them and you're revising them consistently. Next, if you're running short of time, never skip your modules, but instead consider increasing the speed of the modules, taking notes from senior students, as well as taking your own running notes so as to complete your studies on time. Make sure you're familiar with study patterns, or you're familiar with the midterm exam patterns, you're familiar with the number of questions, the duration of the exam, and the type of questions that you will be asked. Make sure you review your module quizzes to get an understanding of how your midterm questions would look like. And finally, be creative and keep experimenting in your learning process, inshallah. So, Jazakum Allahu khairan kathira for tuning in. And if we have any questions, inshallah, you're free to type them in the chat box and I would be happy to assist you on that. Okay, so it looks like we have a few questions. We have a question: when are the module tests due for the first semester? So the module tests will be due before the midterm exams begin. So the last day to attempt, ideally the last day to attempt your module quizzes would be 14th of November, inshallah. Um, will we have MCQs or open-ended questions? Depends on the program that you're currently enrolled in. So if you are a student of the revised programs, you will have both MCQs as well as open-ended questions. But if you are a student of our older programs, then you will only have multiple choice questions. Does midterm exam start at 8th November UTC? What time at UTC? So the midterm exams will, I believe, begin at 6 p.m. UTC of 8th of November, inshallah. How to find correct answers for the incorrect answers in the module tests. So if you come across answers that are incorrect from your module quiz, there are two ways to go about it. Number one is to go back to your course, to go back to your module lecture and verify if indeed the information is still there. And if you don't find the answer to the test in your module lecture, then consider reading the course text and see if you could find the answer in the course text. But if you're still unsure and if you still can't find it in the lecture as well as in the course text, then you may consider contacting your course teacher for an explanation, inshallah. Do we need to take 15 modules before the midterms begin on 8th of November? Yes. So you will need to complete all the modules before the midterm exams. You will need to complete the pre-midterm modules before the midterm exams so that you can proceed with your midterm exams, inshallah. There's another question. Does the midterm exam, oh, sorry, we don't know Arabic, so learning the ayahs and ahadiths in Arabic will be difficult. Is it okay if if we learn the translation? Um, you don't need to memorize the ayah, but you need to memorize, or rather, you need to learn the context of the ayah. You need to maybe review the message and the essence of the ayah, and that should be enough, inshallah. What's the highest mark a question could be, and what's the highest amount of questions? These are both in reference to part B of the exam. So I'm assuming you're referring to the subjective questions. It will depend on course to course. So I would encourage you to contact the help desk to basically check what it would be like for your courses, inshallah. Will I get a link to the midterm exam? Yes. So the midterm exam page will open up when the midterm exams are due, inshallah. How many modules before midterm exams? You will be able to see that on your course page. If you scroll down, once you click on your course page and you scroll down on your right-hand side, you will see a section called course components. It will tell you exactly the number of modules that you have to complete before the midterm exams for that specific course, inshallah. Do we need to finish the tests for all pre-midterm modules before the midterm exam? Yes. Are we going to do all exams in one day or in separate days in that week? So students have the liberty to decide when they want to do the exam. So you will need to complete all your exams from within the exam timeline period. So that's from 8th of November all the way until 14th of November. So you could either choose to do it in a day, you could choose to do it in multiple days. Depends on you as long as you complete them within the timeline. If we're not prepared for all subjects, can we extend time for remaining subjects? So if you decide to attempt your exams in the late period, then there will be a 15% deduction. Will there be any exam for study skill course? No. So the study skill course is a non-academic course. You will have no exams for that course. How long is each exam? Again, it depends on course to course, but for MCQs, it would be about 90 minutes of time. How many exams will be conducted in one day? Like I mentioned, it's completely your call. If you are prepared to give more than one exam in a day, that's fine. But if you would like to give one exam a day, that's also fine. So it's completely your decision. Do I get a reply from the university after applying to an exam center, or that is not necessary? So if you applied for the exam, if you registered for the exam center using the registration portal, you might receive an email from our center's manager, Sister Ishma. She usually confirms if your request has been received. So if you haven't received an email from IOU or from our center's manager confirming your exam center, I would encourage you to contact the help desk right away. If an exam is failed, will we have to retake that course before we're able to move on to the next course in that subject? So if you fail in your midterms, you will still have chance to do well in your assignments and in your final exams so as to pass the course. So it's only when you fail a course, you will need to repeat it. But if you fail, but let's say if you fail an assignment or you fail an exam, but you still manage to do well, then you don't have to repeat it. Can I defer my exams? Depends. If you have certain emergencies, you can apply for a 15% exemption. You can apply for an exemption from the 15% deduction in case of a valid emergency. But if you have other reasons, then you can sit for the late midterm exams with a 15% deduction. Is there lower and upper limit of words for open-ended questions? No, there are no word, to my understanding, there are no word limits for open-ended questions. Is there any recommended way on how to answer open-ended questions? So for open-ended questions, I would encourage you to be very specific about what's being asked, firstly. And number two, be very concise, avoid using jargons, avoid multiple repetitions, and try staying on the point and answering what's being asked, inshallah. And study skill course that shows course grade is 0, but it doesn't have any module tests. Then how will be how will it be graded? Okay, so like I mentioned, the study skill course is a non-academic course. You will not receive any grades for that. You just need to watch the tutorials of the course so as to equip yourselves with the content of the course, inshallah. Will the midterm exam still be written at home or at an exam center? So like I mentioned, if you are a student of the revised programs, you will need to attend your midterm exams from a registered exam center. But if you're a student of our older programs, then you can attempt your midterm exams at home. If I don't get a reply after applying for an exam center, who do I contact? You can contact the help desk at helpdesk@iou.edu.gm. Is the exam going to be online or done on a paper? It's going to be online. Okay, so I'm going to take one last question before we end, inshallah. Salam, I have enrolled in three subjects. So far, I have completed three modules. To complete modules before midterm, how many modules do I have to study per day? So, in order to complete your modules before the midterm exams begin, I would encourage you to complete at least three or four modules every day so as to be back on track, inshallah. So with that, Jazakumullahu khairan kathira, brothers and sisters, for joining in today's session. And I hope and I pray, inshallah, that you have found it beneficial. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this journey easy for you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this learning blessed for you. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow you to excel in your exams and in your entire study experience of IOU, inshallah. And جزاكم الله خيرا كثيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله